One Nevada leader says the state should invest in its babies. The state treasurer proposes a path for babies born in poverty to get a better life. But Republicans say it's a free handout for some and a burden on taxpayers.
The goal here is to create just a little bit of money that can be invested over that child's life. We can pull a family out of poverty.
Treasurer Zach Conine says Nevada should bank on our future in babies. The baby bonds bill would create funds for the most impoverished children in Nevada.
Each family that we pull out of this is more than likely to stay out of poverty, to not be a burden to the social safety net.
AB 28 would help 7,000 babies a year born to Nevada's poorest families under Medicaid. Eligible families would get $3,200 per baby in an investment portfolio. It would grow to $10,000 to $13,000 by the time the child turns 18. It would cost the state $45 million a year. The child could only apply the money towards school, a business, or home. Conine says the investment saves the state money.
Look at the other money that the state spends to support individuals who are living in poverty under that poverty line. It is immense. The state spends more money than this program would cost on SNAP benefits, on food stamps. Unfortunately, if a child is born under Medicaid, they're most likely to remain on Medicaid.
Have far-reaching positive impacts.
We can keep the American dream.
We are concerned that this new entitlement will be too broad and cover too many people. We're also concerned about the possibility for fraud.
Those opposed worry the costs are too high and too many Nevadans would be eligible. All Republicans in committee voted no. In a statement, we perceive it to be a feel-good big government program that arbitrarily gives free handouts to half the population of Nevada. It's unclear to us how exactly we can justify funding such an expansive program, and it's also unclear to us why those born under Medicaid get to be the sole recipients. We think supporting young people in education, entrepreneurship, and home ownership is best done through the free market and not through yet another government program.
I would wish that this bill would address why poverty and underperformance is such a huge concern. Is it the demographic? Is it poor family programs?
So the bill did get passed out of the Government Affairs Committee. It's set to now be heard in the Ways and Means Committee. If it passes there, it'll head to the Assembly floor.